Hello, loves. How are you? Today, we're going to dive deeper into divine feminine surrender. And we're just going to talk a little bit about what are some supportive ways to drop into that surrender and some things that may be ready to unravel out of the old ideas of what surrender may mean. And I want to start out by saying that it feels very important to know there's not really a wrong way to surrender. Okay. This is more about the process of learning to step into your full true power, magnifying and strengthening your own direct connection to your highest power and to your highest source as you're learning how to become a co-creator in a very physically manifested and embodied way with your presence here on this planet as a sacred feminine essence. Okay, so this is meant to be a process in my understanding because what we're doing is actually learning to remember who we actually are in our natural nature as a co-creative higher being with our divine source. And so we've been growing up and living in this planet, on this planet where we were originally taught to not trust that higher power in a lot of ways, right? We were taught to listen to authorities outside of ourselves, to do what we were told, growing up and living in a world that was very masculine, action oriented. And in many cases, we had to embody those energies in order to survive. So I want to really acknowledge this process of embracing and embodying more and more of who you are. And it's about building that trust with yourself and the trust with your higher power and the trust with your own direct connection to your divine source and divine alignment. So I say this because I would like you to drop into the overall bigger picture and why sometimes this can feel like a process where you understand the concept of surrender. You may drop into certain levels of surrender and then feel like another wave of things come up. And then you feel like you might not be in a surrendered state. This is part of that process of like stages of learning to surrender because it essentially surrendering is learning to trust fall with yourself and the higher power. And sometimes I think that there's also been a misnomer or a mistake, not a mistake, but a misunderstanding at times when we attempt to apply what we've known in a 3D relational sense to these twin flame divine counterpart connections. And it can become confusing sometimes in those layers of like at a soul level, knowing that this is your masculine or your sacred counterpart, divine counterpart. And then at the same time, having to surrender to having no idea how things might play out. And at the same time, you're processing potentially millennia of ancestral and past life information as you're going through your purification process. So I would like you, if you feel like you're struggling with this concept of surrender in any way at any time, part of this surrender is actually surrendering to the process in the dance of letting yourself learn, right? And what I'm seeing is I'm saying that it's like your each experience that you have, you're actually learning to trust yourself as you show up for yourself, as you hit pockets or experiences of perhaps feeling uncertain about your connection or your counterpart, or uncertain about what you're supposed to do or what's the right thing to do. This is actually the perfect places where you can drop into surrender. And what I mean by that, when you're uncertain, you can take a step back. You do not have to take any specific actions in those moments where you are not in clarity. And you can take that step back and drop into asking for clarity and truth. I find this personally to be very supportive for me because if I'm willing to look at the truth within myself and see where I might be needing to improve or surrender or drop deeper into my own self love, the process of whatever comes next will support me not only in improving, but also dropping into feeling comfortable in that higher power surrender. So, as you're building trust with yourself in the divine, you're also building trust in the connection and allowing it to unfold in that highest alignment. So it's in an actual interesting dichotomy, but this is how these energies work, is as you actually drop into surrender with the highest alignment, this is actually in some levels where you balance out the control. It's actually a place where you do get to control some of the energies. And what I mean by that, control, is that you get to make that choice to decide to control being in alignment with your highest timeline. Okay. And once you're making that decision for yourself to co create and manifest your highest timeline, that actually starts to unravel and eliminate any of the distractions or other timelines that may have kept you off that highest path. So you see, that kind of brings you into that sense of um, control, but the surrender is where you allow it to flow to you in the highest alignment. Okay. So it's kind of like ordering something from Amazon. You took control. You said, okay, I need this book on Amazon. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to take action and place my order. I'm aligning with this book the same way I'm aligning with my highest timeline. I'm putting in my order for my highest timeline to my highest power. I'm putting in the order of this book to Amazon. Okay. When you order your book on Amazon, you know that it's going to get to you, right? Sometimes within less than 24 hours, depending on where you are, right? And but you know it's on the way one way or another. Even if it's on back order, it's going to get there to you eventually, or you'll get a refund and you can go order it someplace else. But you know that you've put in that order, and 99% of the time, it's going to get to you in a timely fashion. Same thing when we put in our order with the universe and our higher self for our highest timeline. Sometimes things happen immediately, sometimes it takes a little bit of time, somewhat like that back order. But what's happening is in the meantime, you're getting aligned with that. You're unraveling and clearing out of any of the distortion or dissociation or misunderstandings, right? Within yourself, within your own system. And you're also surrendering to the process of dropping into the truth of who you are, but also your connection. So that's where I'm saying some of these main things that I have found helpful is if things are uncertain, to literally just ask for that highest alignment and to ask for truth and clarity. If there's energy that feels uncomfortable or anxious or like it's pulling on you, it can be very helpful to sort of give that energy space. If you're uncertain, what I like to do sometimes is even visualize it like a kite string. So you're not like getting rid of it. You're not avoiding what you're needing to look at or what's feeling uncomfortable. But sometimes when it feels squished or uncertain, um, it can create like an anxious feeling, and then you put pressure on yourself, which causes more anxiety. But if you sort of give it like that kite string experience where you're letting it out like a kite string or a fishing line, it gives you space to drop into some surrender, because sometimes when we're feeling really anxious and there's no space, there's really not a place to surrender. But you can sort of like envision letting it to have that space and grace and asking for a solution within it. Because sometimes it's not about needing to figure it all out at once. And if you resist it, it gets stronger. But also, if you try to grab onto it and figure it all out at once, that can become overwhelming as well. This is why you guys hear me say space and grace quite a bit, because this is where you strengthen the muscle of learning to surrender. For me personally, through this process, as I practiced it, as I practiced giving things space, as I practiced having my intention to surrender to the higher power, it was something that I had to practice more diligently up front. And what I mean by that is that my natural patterns were to want to control things in the physical world. I would want to know what was going to happen next. And if I didn't know, I would want to control what that was going to be. And this is really a safety mechanism, um, that, especially for any of you who may have had PTSD or CPTSD or anxiety or trauma, experiences, like, and then you've learned how to feel safe and take care of yourself through more of those controlling actions. This is where you're learning. And I'm not saying it's about releasing the complete control or the complete protection. It's about learning to soften it so you can start to surrender and give it space where you're safe to give it space. That's where, like I told you, the kite or the fishing line, like just giving it space. Okay, I don't have to figure this out right now. I can ask for a solution and give it a little bit of space. Give yourself, it can be helpful sometimes to say, okay, maybe I'll have clarity in the morning, right? With some situations, you can get clarity quickly. With some bigger topics, you may need a little bit more time, like a week or a month, or even longer in some cases. But what you can do is start to ask for clarity and what steps you can take to support yourself in the meantime. Because as you're aligning with your highest timeline, there are going to probably be new things that start to open up with you and for you that are going to lead you in new, more expanded ways, and allowing you to actually step into your power and into your gifts. And I feel like this is in particularly important for the feminines, and it connects back to my most recent seven chakra video with the feminines. And I say this because a lot of the feminines' main, like, major abilities, right? Her intuitive, creative, um, telepathic, precognitive, very energetic or intuitive based abilities are a big part of what has been suppressed in humanity in general. And many of the feminines have been activated to open these gifts, but also there is a time where the feminines are needing space and grace to learn how to wield her true abilities and powers so that she can feel stable within those. And so, as the sacred masculine activated the sacred feminine on her twin flame divine counterpart initiation, part of that initiation and activation was around enhancing divine feminine's abilities. So, part of her learning how to work with her powers is releasing some of the control in experiencing the combo of the surrender and the control, right? So it's coming to me. I've spoke about this once before, but I can't remember when. But it's sort of this idea of like divine feminine's true powers are so incredible. But if she hasn't had access to all of those, or they were squished or suppressed, or her wanting to control and feel safe sort of snuffed out her own higher abilities. So as she's learning to align with her highest potential and timeline, she's dropping into surrendering not only to the higher process of her twin flame divine counterpart initiation, but also to her own gorgeous, amazing abilities. So it'll give you that space when you allow your connection space to breathe, right? This is where you actually get to drop in and embody the essence of all of who you are, which in turn will allow you to show up in your connection in a more fully manifested, balanced, harmonious way because you're actually learning your true power. And how many of you have sensed this is where a deep mirror comes in, where you connected with your masculine and you saw his amazing power and abilities, and that is so deeply where you felt that love, like his true self is what you're in love with, right? And vice versa, right? So as you step into your true essence, it activates that deeper true love essence within yourself and within your connection. So, regardless of how things may have played out, right? Or even where they are, ultimately, if this is your true counterpart and your true masculine, the more you bloom and blossom into your gifts and abilities, as you surrender to your true powers, this will allow him to be able to see you and find you and also open to his true powers and abilities. What I was going to say earlier, I didn't forget, was that your powers in many ways, and why there's this dance of learning to control and surrender, right? Kind of like the intuition and the logic, is because you're learning to open to and wield not only the power of your connection, but an important part is learning to wield your own true power as you embody these gifts. And so it's like a horse, right? You have a wild, gorgeous, powerful horse out in the wild, right? And all of a sudden you say, come along this horse and you capture it, so to speak. Okay. But not intending to capture this horse to keep it down or to keep it hidden away, right? That's the equivalent of your gifts and your abilities. Your say connecting with the horse and bringing it home with you because you want to learn how to work with it. You want to co-create with its powers and your powers. But there's this dance, like you might at first put the horse in the corral, right? In the stall. And that is the equivalent of your powers being kind of hidden away, right? And a little bit probably squished and suffocated. Maybe at first it feels safe, but over time, that wild horse is going to feel very squished, okay? This horse has so much abilities and powers. This horse is meant to be used. Its gifts and abilities and talents are meant to be shared and experienced in the world. And so as you become a little bit more comfortable with surrendering and understanding your gifts and abilities, say you take the horse, i.e., your gifts and abilities, and you go into the corral, okay, the bigger pen where you start to work with. It's still a safe container, but you're learning how to work with those abilities, say within yourself or within one or two friends or close people that you feel safe with. And you start to practice those gifts and abilities, and then you learn how to harness it deeper. Like you learn how to work with the reins with the horse, right? But not in a sense of controlling or abusing the horse, but as a way to communicate, right? And say you have a saddle to make it more comfortable. And in time, as you build this strength and this relationship with the reins and with the horse, over time, you can leave the corral and you can go for a ride back out in the wild, right? Out in the world. And over time, what I'm sensing and feeling is that the rider and the horse, as they trust one another, as they love one another, as they build that sense of surrender to the connection and a surrender to the power and the magnitude of what they create together, right? It allows them maybe at a point down the road to literally ride bareback as rider and horse with no reins and no saddle, but just that pure direct connection. As you learn to do this with yourself, sacred feminine, as you learn how to accept and embody who you are, your higher power, your talents, your gifts, your true essence and energy into your heart, this is actually where you build the muscle to be able to do this with your masculine. You are literally going through this process of holding space for your own growth, and it is the practice that not only supports you in sharing in the world, but it prepares you for the true magnitude and power of your sacred connection, your sacred union. So, this is why you hear about surrender so much. Yes, a lot of times we hear about it so that we're unraveling and detaching from the codependence that we may have with our divine counterpart, twin flame connection, right? Which was mirrored to us so we would know where to unravel. So, if this is your true counterpart and your true twin flame, no matter how much you unravel, no matter how much you dissolve, the true connection in love and essence is always going to be present. In fact, the more you learn to surrender, the more you trust the higher power, the stronger that connection will become. And if for any reason it doesn't over time, it could be that that was simply a catalyst connection preparing you for your true divine counterpart connection. Either way, even if you don't know in moments, that's okay. The beauty of it is it's all still supporting you to get exactly where you have intended yourself to be as a soul, okay? What surrender is not dropping into agreeing to allow yourself to be hurt or disrespected or um held in old patterns that you've outgrown simply to hold on old to the old attachments of your counterpart connection or for any other relationships for that matter, okay? But why I say this is a process is because we grew up in a world teaching us one way, and now we've opened up and activated to whole new ways of being. Yes, they are your soul's natural nature, but they are new in many cases to your human self that is still navigating this physical world in a world where other people may not be aware of what you're experiencing. So, this process is an unfolding for a very important reason because it's a process of becoming psychologically strong enough to be able to do these, okay? To be able to open up to your abilities and to learn how to handle and wield them in a world that didn't teach you how to do that. And in many cases, you were taught to shut it down. Okay. So, this is where your unconditional self love is so incredibly important in this surrender process, loves. You're becoming safe and stable in all of who you are, in your embodiment as a sacred feminine of your true essence, your true gifts, your true voice, your true power, your true love. And as you do it for yourself, is how you share it into your connection and how you share it out into the world as guided. Okay, loves? And it's where you are learning again the muscle of how when triggers come up or uncertainty comes up, not that you're needing to be perfect in each moment and to know the answers. It's more about remembering and learning what processes work for you to help you move through the triggers or the uncertainty. It's not beating yourself up or condemning yourself that you do not know the answers. It's about acknowledging, like, hey, here's something that I don't know yet, but I'm ready to learn. I'm ready to figure it out. I'm ready to discern it. And I'm very excited that I actually get to do this in a way that's my truth. I get to choose what I participate in. I get to choose what gifts I develop within myself. I get to build the muscle to feel confident and comfortable in my true powers and abilities. I can create a safe container for myself and my abilities and talents. And I don't have to be at a certain place at a certain time because my soul and my higher self knows how to do that. And it's going to align it all in the most perfect, divine, and aligned order. All you have to do is ask for your highest alignment and surrender to the path that starts to unfold in front of you. Surrender to the guidance that comes to you. Surrender to trusting yourself. Surrender to letting yourself build your muscle of your own direct connection to source and your higher self and your own direct connection to Mother Earth, to trust yourself and then build trust with your sacred masculine counterpart. And as you do that, as you surrender to yourself and your trust, you are probably going to find that you realize that your masculine was holding space for you to go through this process all along, the same way you've been holding space for him to go through his initiation. All right, loves, I love this. I hope that this was helpful. I kind of knew some of the things that were going to come through, but actually a lot kind of unfolded in a way that I didn't expect. But I always trust and ask for whatever is going to be the most beneficial for you. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, if you want me to expand deeper into anything that I spoke about here today, please feel free to drop that in the comments. I would love to hear from you, and I will be back to see you soon. I hope this was helpful. I love you and have a beautiful rest of your day, loves.